Welcome to another episode of the Game Changers podcast, where we shine the spotlight on the great voices of the industry. And today I have another wonderful guest with Rika. And without further ado, I would like to hand it over to her for a quick introduction.
Thanks for having me here. It's really great to be here,
Happy to.
Lars. So I'm Rika, and I was the lead level designer of Starbreeze, mainly for Payday 3. And I would say that it's kind of like my first multiplayer co-op game that I ever worked on and shaped, if you exclude all those like Payday 2 DLC, for instance. And I guess like my recent project would be Project Baxter. It's a co-op action game that is set in the world of Dungeons and Dragons. That was recently announced as well. So I think it was. I saw there was a lot of like amazing things being done for that project. So uh, looking forward to see like what the team has to come up with on that note. And I guess like for me, if I were to say like when do I start up my career, it was in 2015 when I officially start off my level design career in a sense. And I have my first job in Ubisoft back when I was still in Singapore. And I basically started from a level designer and then eventually become a lead level designer. And I also have worked on a couple of Assassin's Creed titles during that time as well.
Yeah, Ubisoft has a kind of interesting
Yes.
portfolio, obviously, with a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, yeah.
By the way, I've just recently been to Singapore this year,
Oh,
and I
okay.
loved it. It was great. It was the first time for me there, but really had a great time. Wonderful city.
Yes. I think like Singapore is basically like a place where you want to have a introduction to all the cuisine from like Southeast Asia. That is kind of like the place where you want to really go to.
Yeah, I was there for Gamescom Asia, and it's pretty much the main reason we kind of established this there to
Oh, that's nice.
enter it as like a harbor for everybody from Southeast Asia to come to. That's really good to see.
Yes.
So let's dive in a bit further. And, if you've maybe listened to other episodes of this podcast, you know that the first question is always one about the love for characters in video games. So I'm going to ask you the same thing, Rika, which is if you had the chance to talk to a character from any video game of your choice, present or past, who would that character be? And what would you ask it if you had the opportunity to talk to them for 1 hour?
Mm, I guess for me, like it's more about trying to understand and be curious about to know more about the character. As for like what would I really ask is kind of like I guess will be more of like go along with the conversation that flows from there. And I think for me, there's quite a couple of games that I would love to, travel into the game world and like explore and talk to the characters. But if I were to really choose one, I would choose Igor. He's the master and caretaker of this Velvet Room in the Persona series. I'm not sure if you have heard of it. So I thought like the Velvet Room was quite an interesting concept that exists like throughout all their series or all the Persona games, and it's kind of like a space between dreams and reality. And interesting enough that the appearance of the room does reflects the states of mind of those who visit it, and it can change depending on who visit it and what the individual intent is. So it's kind of like very interesting to see like different persona titles. The room change its appearance depending on the personality and the characteristic of the protagonist. And then this ego character, he is kind of like the master of the room, and he looks kind of creepy with his pop-up eyes and like this really long nose. So I thought like it was quite intriguing and mysterious at the same time of like how this character came to be. He was also sort of like rumored to be like a doll that was created by this guy that exists like in this whole entire universe that the game is set at. So I thought like it would be quite interesting to sit in the velvet room and talk to him, like understand like what is his goals and like how he came to be and so on and so forth. So I think that would be like one of the interesting characters to talk to.
And now you get me interested as well. I mean, wouldn't it be nice to have a room like this in the real world for even
Oh
for
yes.
self-reflection? You just walk in there and you realize what state of mind you're in, and you have the chance to focus. It'd be kind of cool. No, I haven't
Yes.
really played it myself, but it's a really interesting concept that you described, and
Yeah.
I can understand.
I think one of the uh thing with the game is that it takes a long time to really play through that. I remember like most of the games that I play in that series, nothing goes like below like 100 hours.
So, moving from characters to games that we all played and might have worked on or would
Hmm.
have loved to work on. So, is there anything in the past that you would now say, I would have loved to work on this game to contribute to it because you liked it so much, or maybe you didn't like it and you wanted to improve it in some areas? Is there anything that comes to mind?
For me, I grew up with games like on Nintendo Game Boy and also PC game mainly. I don't really have
Mm.
a console until when I am a teenager. So like for me, like during that period of time, I'm very into like Mario RPG role playing games, and also especially point and click adventure games. So I also always have been a fan for like those murder mystery genre, like Sherlock Holmes,
Mm.
Nancy Drew, and Hardy Boys, since young. I remember like I stayed in the library for a long time, like when I was in high school, and I was just like reading up all those books that is available there. Yeah. And I think I also play a couple of point and click adventure that ties to like solving a mystery and stuff like that. But one of the game that really caught my eyes during that period was Gabriel Knight. But I didn't actually play the original. I played the 20 years anniversary version, and the color that they used in that whole package was so beautiful, and like the whole entire game is so interesting. Like would be interested to work on this kind of game because I never really work on any kind of this kind of genre before. It has always been like a very 3D kind of like games in a way. So would be quite interesting to see like how do they create like the environment, the characters, and the story itself. Because I think like that time when I discovered this game, it was the premise of the story was quite intriguing to me. Because it was like dark horror, voodoo, and a lot more, which is very different from some of the games that I've come across before then at that point. So I think that was quite interesting to me, and I would be interested to work on those kind of games. And if you look at it, it's like how you go about in the world exploring, like discovering new clues and stuff like that, interacting with other characters and solving puzzles. Gradually, if you look at the games these days, it's kind of like originated in a sense from like all those kind of elements from before, like the 2D, 2.5D kind of style of
Right.
games. So I thought like it would be very interesting to see like how uh we can travel back in time to work on those kind of games again.
Well, maybe they do like a 40 anniversary edition or something that you can work on. I don't know.
It
I
will be
played the
in
original
3D.
one, so at
Oh,
the risk
okay.
of admitting that I'm old, but I played it when it came out, and Gabriel Knight was amazing. I really liked the game.
Yes.
It's quite good.
Yeah.
But I can imagine like a level design role on a game like this would be quite different from what you do
Yes,
right now.
definitely. I mean, like it will be about. I guess it won't be so much of like the level design part of things, but it will be more of like how do you design the narrative around the environment itself,
Mhm.
and the things that is in the screen. How do you lead the player to go from one area to the other, and how eventually you can sort of like allow them to figure out within the environment itself how to proceed on forward to solve the mystery. So I guess like that's probably how I would take it, which I would suppose that is more like a combination of art and narrative design in a
Yeah.
sense, not so much of level, I would suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting that most of the people that ultimately ended up in the industry had very interesting and joyful experiences with these type of games.
Yes.
Some of my first games, point-and-click adventures, because they were just the thing at the time. And
Yes.
in recent years, there were some really good ones being released, but not as many anymore. And it seems like
Mm.
the industry has been moving away from that a little bit. Maybe players these days want more action in most of the games or something, or at least everything in 3D. But I
Yes.
truly enjoy still playing those games if I find the time to do so. So
Yeah. I
I could see
mean,
a few more.
every once in a while, I will tend to go back to find like this kind of games to see if there is any like much more interesting ones, because I think like those are my comfort kind of games whereby you just sit back, relax, and click around the world to
Mm,
um explore, rather than like for an action game you can't have to always be on the go.
yeah. Yeah, for me, the first game I ever played, I think, was Loom by LucasArts. I mean, it came out in like the 80s or so. You might not know it, but it was I saw it on my dad's computer, and that actually got me interested in video games.
Oh,
Ultimately, leading
okay.
to my first computer being bought, and then the rest is history. But it was really cool. You had to, I think, play some musical instruments or play some tunes
Oh, that's
along. It was a
nice.
very interesting concept. So if you're curious, look it up. Loom, I think was
Okay,
it.
okay.
It was pretty interesting.
Sounds
So,
nice.
since we're already talking about games from the past, there's this kind of new question that I added recently, which is if there is a game that you could erase from your own memories, not necessarily from the memories of time, but from your own
Hmm.
memories, so you've never experienced it before, and you would get the chance to play it again. Which one would it be? Is there one?
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't like really think of it, but maybe like for example, like this type of games, like the only kind of games that I can think of is like you play like some games just have you like play through one time, and then you kind of like understand like the whole entire story,
Hmm.
like the whole story revealed to you at the end, and it's like, oh, that is the whole plot of the game itself. And you cannot really like replay it again, because you'll be
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
okay, I already come to know like what is happening in a way. So I guess for me, one of the games that I played last year was this game called What Remains of Ada Finch. I think that was the game that suddenly came to my mind when you were asking the
Hmm.
question. That I think that if I were to choose, that would be the game that I would like to erase from my mind and play again, because I really like the whole entire premises of you entering this house, and like all the different puzzles that you get to solve and engage in. It's really very interesting, and everything sort of makes sense and account to the personality and the character within the different rooms itself. So yeah.
It's definitely a great one, and you're right. Of course, these games, once you play them through, then you have a spoiler, so you can't
It's like,
play them again without
no.
knowing what's going to happen. But for me, it would be Final Fantasy VII. I think when I played it when I was like a teenager, and it came out, just some of the magic moments in my gaming history, and I would definitely redo this if I could. Even though I would probably be sad not knowing it right now, but then get the chance to play it again. So. Let's move a bit from like the game side to the industry side and your own personal story in the industry.
Mm.
So I was wondering, is there any moment in time, kind of one of those crucible moments, like those eureka moments, where you realized something that you didn't know before that kind of changed your perspective on how you approach your work and or how you approach the industry in general?
Mm, I guess for me in general, because I started off as just someone doing like relatively hands-on stuff, like working as
Mm,
a level designer, building levels and things like that. And then at some point of time, I kind of like got the opportunity to become a lead, a manager to the team that I used to work closely with. So I guess like back in Ubisoft, there's like this kind of like a transition period whereby you transit in between, like from someone doing very hands-on stuff to becoming a lead. And during that time, you're kind of like you have to sort of like juggle between both sides in a in a way. So how do you juggle both sides and still meet the expectation of
Mhm.
both end of being a level designer and being a lead at the same time. So and then there's this word that keep popping up like every now and then, and even my manager was like feedback to me saying that, oh, you need to delegate more, you need to delegate more. But the art of delegation, as much as people put it out there, it's not actually that easier for someone that doesn't actually have any formal training
Mm.
training to when as they get into the role. So for me, initially I was thinking how do I properly distribute things on my hand to others and not showing that I'm just throwing tasks to people and expect them to do it when it's technically your responsibility in a
Mm.
sense. So I was a little bit struggling in the beginning because I was trying to take on a lot of things on my own on both end, because I have to be, even though I'm like 50-50 on both sides, but I'm still expected to deliver 100% on both sides as well. So
Yeah.
how do you go about really doing that? And I think I realized at some point that I don't really need to think of it that way, in a way that I'm throwing things to people to do, but it's more of getting in a kind of like a different mindset of distributing tasks to people who can handle them and assist you out while you are able to focus more on those higher priority topics that are actually in need of your attention in a sense. So I guess like that for me would be my kind of eureka moment in a way, because I never really thought of I can shift my mindset a little bit to think of it that way, in a sense. And regardless whether I'm kind of in a lead or just someone doing the work itself, I think for me that I realized that it's okay to reach out to people for assistance at time when I really feel overwhelmed, and actually do it as early as possible, because I think if anything, I think a lot of people around me would appreciate that a lot, that I trust them with the work at hand and actually sound it early enough for people to react without creating any unnecessary last minute panic and stress, because we've seen that happen quite a lot of times in general. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, so asking for help is sometimes one of the most difficult things to do.
Yes, yeah.
Is what I've learned, because you always feel like, I don't want to make it somebody else's burden. But in the end, I think great teams can only shine if you allow that to happen. So let me ask you kind of a follow up to this. What was the most difficult part for you tuning into being the role of a leader on the team? Was it the difficulty of not wanting to let go the actual hands-on work on what you're good at in level design? Or was it, maybe in the beginning a bit the lack of trust in terms of, I don't know yet if they are delivering it to my standards? Is there anything along those lines?
I guess it's a bit of both basically, because when you are kind of at the time when I was considered to be one of the most experienced level designer that is kind of left in the
Mm.
team, and I kind of have to uh show an example of oh, I'm doing this thing, and basically be on the front line showing people oh, what you are supposed to do and how do you go about doing it. And you are kind of I'm the one tackling most of the important things as well. So how could I actually take a step back, maybe spend a lot more time to help out people, to onboard them, to teach them the things that I
Mm.
know before and learn. Because all those things takes time, and then if the time is not at your side, and then that makes it even much more challenging enough to get into that space to actually help people to do it. I gradually think that it's okay to spend a little bit of time to just let go a little bit of things, just so that people can work their magic. Because there are times that I have this expectation of how things should be done, but oftentimes when I let people go to do it and give them just a set of instruction and direction to go on with, I was usually awarded with something much more surprising when it came back to me. They have their
Yeah.
own touch to the things that the tasks that I have give them give to them, and oftentimes I'm like surprised, and like I expected like this part, and then they give me this, and I just like okay. And I think like that actually like over time builds up the trust that I need to just say that like the next time round I can just rely on them to do whatever they want, as long as like we are aligned on the direction, we are aligned on the expectation. So like as I think like as I move on, I just eventually kind of just tell myself like as long as I set the right expectation and I don't micromanage too much on people itself, I would eventually be able to get the result that I never expect in return.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yes,
Once you
exactly.
build that relationship that's full of trust, then you usually get more than you expected. Because of course you are you, and other people are different, and they might add aspects to the game, or in that case to the level design that you maybe couldn't even pull off yourself. They would do it
Yes,
differently
definitely.
than you would do it, but sometimes maybe even better for what needs to be accomplished if they work together as a team. So that's at least what I've come to learn. Because I always have this tendency of like, okay, I know how to do this, and maybe I even do it better. But I
Yes.
think if you combine teaching and taking the time to do it,
Mhm.
and you said it as well, with trust, then ultimately it leads to outstanding results. And I wish, like in this industry, we wouldn't always be in that dilemma that the next milestone is like a few weeks out, and everything needs to be fast. But at the same time, we need to train new talent that comes into the industry, and we need to take the time to do so. And if seniors
Yes,
don't do it,
definitely.
then I think we will have a problem further down the road. And we saw it to some extent this year, and in some of the projects that got canceled and studios being closed.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think this is a very difficult dilemma that we're always facing. And
Yeah.
speaking of that, I'm wondering, obviously moving a bit to the industry side of things and
Mm.
challenges that we face. Is there anything that you feel needs to be addressed in the kind of the current state of the industry? Any particular challenge that you would like to solve because you feel particularly passionate about it?
I would say that will probably be like how people work with one another, collaboratively together. I think that it to me was something that I am really passionate about, especially if you think of like us level designer, regardless in any kind of like projects that we have worked on, we are usually like the bridge to like all the other departments in a way. So like I think it's important to me like how we work with one another and get the support that we require from other departments and vice versa from us to them as well. And to me like people generally is always like the challenge. How do you like pull people out from like their own zone to tell them that hey, we need your help, you need to do this right now and things like that. And I think like because of the whole COVID situation, people stay home, work from home, and they become comfortable. And then like as we gradually return to like this normal circumstances of like the COVID is not like beyond it's not over yet in a sense, but it's kind of like it becomes like much more tame in a way right now at this time, and people gradually return to work, sometimes like go back to office to work. I think like sometimes we like people stop learning how to communicate as they were being able to communicate from like the way before. So how do you get them back into that space and so on and so forth. So I think like for me, when I came into Starbreeze that time, my first usual step is always to try to understand how different group of people work and how can we bridge the gap in a way to make sure that when we are working together, we don't go into like unnecessary conflict. I mean, there might be conflict that needs to be have to in order for things to move on. But I think like what is important is that we understand how each other works and how can we work together with one another. And for me, it's like how I do approach it is to create and iterate on processes that help them out to work together. And of course, like not all the time it works smoothly like this, but I think like it's also quite important that the individual themselves are also open to changing their way to of working if necessary to make their life a bit easier for themselves in the long run. So
And I think there's no silver bullet for
mm,
every team out there. I think it
yes.
always depends a bit on the team dynamics and the experience of people and how they best work together. I mean,
Mm,
we will definitely in the future have a lot of hybrid teams, sometimes fully remote teams, sometimes in office teams, and we need
yeah.
to figure out ways how these people can work together the most effective and most efficient way. And that's what I've learned throughout the pandemic, that a lot of the leads that have been good leads before were struggling with the situation that they now had to lead people remotely, and it requires a different skill set.
Yeah.
It's not that it's not possible, but it's sometimes a bit of a challenge if you don't get the training needed for that, if you don't really reflect and think, how can you make this work? I've seen this across countless studios, and I hope going forward, as you say, if we establish kind of a new normal, which is probably going to be some sort of hybrid for most studios, then I think leadership also needs to evolve and figure out,
Yes.
how do I best do this to achieve the goals that you were talking about, which is great collaboration and ultimately leading to great game projects at the end
Yeah.
of this.
Yes, I think like the beauty of our industry is that like I think like I saw from like this whole layoff situation where everyone is like so supportive of one another and coming together to help out one another to try to find jobs and just talk among one another. And I was also like quite thankful because I'm not sure if you saw my second post on LinkedIn that I was actually affected partially as well because I was supposed to join Fish Lab with Tobias
Yeah.
and some other talented people over there, and then eventually the role was made redundant due to the cancellation of projects. And then I was thankful that like during those weeks it was very stressful for me as well, and I was trying to like find all the different solutions, and people actually came and reached out and asking like, oh, do you need help, like, oh, maybe I can help you to find out like what roles might be available in my company and so on and so forth. So I think like that is kind of like the beauty of our industry, like how everyone is coming together to help and support one another, even like regardless whether in the company or like the team, people does exhibit those kind of behavior as well, which I am really appreciated of because I think like I have talked to like my boyfriend and like my cousin who I'm relatively close with back in Singapore, and they work in the finance industry, and they is basically you can see like a world apart difference that how cutthroat it is
Yeah.
and how people are like against one another, like super competitive and all. So I'm really thankful, like even though we have some form of competition within our industry, but it's I see it as a friendly kind, like we are trying to create like the best game out there for our players and for ourselves as well. And it's not something that is like competitive in a way that is very toxic. So but it's more of like coming together, seeing like what great things that we can do and create. So I think like that was really like the most amazing thing to me, and I would love to continue to be part of this industry as much as I can.
I could sign this 100%. Pretty much reflects fully how I view this as well. I'm very happy to be part of this industry, and even though I'm personally also in a transition to something new,
Oh,
I want to contribute a little bit. It's similar to many other amazing people in the industry to help kind of strengthen that network that we have, and ultimately help good people find new opportunities. And speaking of those new opportunities, the dreams, the aspirations you have for yourself in the next couple of years, what's going to be your dream project? What's going to be the next thing for you to do? Is there anything you want to share?
So I mean, I gotten a new job actually starting from next week, and I am actually going back.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm actually going back to being a level designer again. So, and I think it's quite a nice period of time and opportunity to really take a step back from managing like team and things like that, to just kind of like focus on myself and my skills in a way. And I guess like for me, like when we talk about dream project and things like that, I would say that I am generally quite open to different kind of like games that I would like to make, because I just want to try out working on different games, gaining the experience of that. And I think like ultimately is every developer dreams to create their own game. So I hasn't really reached that stage yet in a sense.
Mhm.
But for me, like for a project, I think it would be great to really work with a group of people that I know who can be really open to doing something different compared to like what we probably have done years before, to just try something out really new, different. And I guess like it's really open to challenging themselves and the others around them in a very healthy manner too. Because I think like sometimes when we are stuck too comfortably in our comfort zone, we
Mm.
end up not really evolving and not really improving ourselves. And then we kind of like trap ourselves in that sphere of, okay, we don't want to do anything new, we don't want to try anything out. So I would love to be in the same, like when I work on the project, I would love to have people will be able to challenge themselves, will be able to come out of their comfort zone, just to see like how far can we push. Of course, like not overly, like compromising, and knowing when to push and pull as needed when it comes to ideas and the work in a way. And I guess like for me, within a project or a company, in a sense, I see culture as something that is really important, because that is how it shapes the people, the work that we do as well. And it's like just really keeping in mind that like there's nothing really personal, but it's more like we are all here to deliver a good game and having a fun time together doing it. And one thing that I realized that and learned that throughout the past few years, I think having a structure sort of in place within the company, within the project, is really important. Um, in a way to ensure that like some of the workflow and processes that you are trying to introduce into the project can actually be reinforced in some sense, or is easily uh, a little bit easier to establish properly enough for the people to work in an effective and efficient manner. Because I think like to have that as a best scenario in a sense, because I didn't realize how important a structure is for a company, because like without it things start to fall apart like relatively easily in a way.
Yeah, and they always do usually.
Yes.
In the beginning, it's all chaos, and sometimes teams start very small, and I think we've all seen that. But as you
Mm,
grow and as you take on more ambitious projects, I think it doesn't really go without having a structure in place. And also, there's always people that are moving on to other opportunities, and if you onboard new people and you don't have something in place to bring them up to speed quickly, this is always a big challenge. So I think, as to what you said before, if you combine that with culture, then you pretty
mm,
much have the recipe you need in order to make successful games. So you need to provide this environment where people can shine at the same time. Sometimes, and I mean this in a very positive way, make them a bit
yeah.
uncomfortable in a way, like let them think
Mm.
about things they may have not done before and figure it out together as a team. I think that's where the beauty can actually happen.
Yeah, I thought like the environment is like something that is very important as well for us to grow, to neutral ourselves,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and work with other, create the synergy that we want within the team itself. Because I think without the a good environment, you basically cannot really do that, and you will always struggle no matter what you're trying to do.
Rika, I want to thank you so much for being
Thank
my
you.
guest on the podcast today. I wish you nothing but the best for your future. I hope the next opportunity you take on starting next week is going to be very fulfilling for you.
Yes.
And maybe, you get to make those great games that we talked about today at some point in the future. I mean, you've already worked on quite some amazing ones. So, yeah, again, thanks for being with me. Thanks to all the listeners of today's episode. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to these podcasts.
Thank you, and likewise too. All the best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.